As you bring yourself onto your mat facing the wall, so you have the short end of your mat facing the wall, bring yourself a distance facing the wall where you can have your fingertips about shoulder level, where your shoulders are relaxed on your back, and then check to see that you're not leaning into your hands. So adjust as you need to. Find where you're a good distance from the wall, that you have the support for your balance, but you're not leaning into the wall. So it's a light touch with your fingertips. And then double check your feet, that they're parallel to each other, about a fist width apart, so your mountain stance. So once you get your feet established, we're going to move into a really simple movement that energizes the backs of the legs and brings some energy into the whole body. So lift your heels up, come up above the balls of your feet. Inhale as you come up, and exhale as you bring your heels back down. And after a few of these, as you get the breath and your body warming, check that your heels are coming down behind the middle of your toes. So you continue to have your feet parallel to each other instead of in a V. Once you get your feet established, your distance from the wall, then do another 25 lifts and lowers. So you inhale up, exhale down. Complete breath in, complete breath out. Feel that you're bringing weight onto the little toe side of your foot, so you're not putting all the weight in the big toe. And get a sense of lifting all the way up through your body. As you start to find more heat in your calves, deepen your breathing. Keep your jaw and shoulders relaxed. When you get to your last lift, hold the lift, but don't hold your breath. Breathe long and deep. Think of the breath moving all the way down into your feet and your legs. With your next exhale, release your heels back down and bring your palms to the wall as you step your feet back away from the wall. And the distance that you'll need here may take a little while to find. We're moving into wall plank. So this is like plank or push-up position, but with the wall. So you don't have to hold your whole body weight up, and you can find some of the precision of plank pose here. So you're keeping your feet parallel to each other, about a fist width apart, and then finding where your body is one long line, like a plank of wood. If you found that your hands are up too high, your shoulders are creeping up, bring them a little bit lower. If you tend to feel your wrists, then stretch through the base of your fingers before you plant your palms down. And think of pushing the wall away instead of sinking into your hands, just like you do when you're on the ground. Feel that your shoulder blades are broad onto your back and that your low back is long. So take your low belly, draw it in and up, and aim your tailbone towards your heels. What you'll find here as you get into position is a stretch through your calves that you've just strengthened with those heel lifts. What often happens here is that inner arches and ankles tend to collapse down, especially if you have low arches. So think of rolling your inner arches over a little log, pressing the outer edges of your feet down. So you keep that inner arch lift, and notice if that changes any stretch in the backs of your legs. See if you can get a sense of your body once more of being one long line from your head, through your spine, right down to your heels. So notice if your butt is sticking out and back, or if your shoulders are rounded, or if you've gone in the other direction and have sunk your pelvis forward. Give this another breath or so, and focusing your attention on stretching through the muscles you just engaged, through your lower legs. This next time that you exhale, step your right foot forward, and you may end up with your toes right at the wall. How you'll know where your feet need to be is that when you bend your right knee, it'll be right over your ankle, and you'll be able to see your big toe inside your kneecap when you look down. And at the same time, you'll find a deeper stretch through that left calf than what you just had in wall plank. So you may need to take a little bit more space between your feet, front to back, keeping that hip distance side to side so that you're not on a tightrope. If you step your left foot farther back, then you might find you're on your fingertips instead of your palms. That left foot, you'll find the inner arch wants to drop down, so press the outer edge of your foot down into the ground. And to help square your hips, draw your low belly in and up and think of your front hip bones like headlights facing the wall instead of the left side of your mat. So you may find that in order to get some space in your low back, you need to bend your left knee a little bit more. Adjust your legs so that you don't strain your low back, and then find your depth, keeping your low back long. If you want to play with balance, with moving into a fuller version of this wall warrior, you can take your arms up overhead, but be sure that you keep your low back long, low ribs tucked in, and your shoulders from creeping up around your neck. If you take your arms up overhead, lengthen through your elbows, spread your fingers out, let the energy extend up from your feet, through your spine, to your fingers. One more inhale wherever you are. And as you exhale, bring your fingertips back to the wall and take your weight into your left foot as you swing your right leg back behind you in space. We're playing here with Warrior 3 using the wall for support. This is a little bit of fun. So feel free to adjust if you need to so that you can both touch the wall with your fingertips and feel your weight is in your left foot. Draw up through your left kneecap. So a good way to find that is by anchoring down through your left heel and then reach back through the ball of your right foot, squaring that front right hip to face the floor so you're not opening the face off the right side of the mat, and starting to open your upper body towards the ground as well, letting your underarms open without your shoulders creeping up. Give it one more breath to play, and as you exhale, step your right foot forward. So now what you're doing when you step that right foot back onto the mat, you're finding where both heels are on the same line. Your back toes, your left toes, are slightly angled out from that line towards the left side of the mat, and your right toes are facing straight ahead. So look at your feet, see if you can get your right foot and your back heel on the same line. You have the wall for balance, so you can work with this tightrope. The distance between your feet is 2 or 3 feet. Once you find where your feet are set and your palms or your fingertips are on the wall again, begin to square your hips. Take your left hip forward, your right hip back, and right away you'll start to feel both legs coming into a deeper stretch. Be mindful here of not locking your knees. So draw your kneecaps up. The more you lift up through your quadriceps, engage your quadriceps, the more you'll find a stretch through your hamstrings. Once you find that, see if you want to bring your torso a little more parallel to the floor. That's going to change your stretch as well. So instead of compromising by rounding your low back, keep your tailbone lifted, your low back long. And if you need to, you can have your upper body higher up the wall. So adjust to where you're getting a stretch through the legs that's breathable, and your shoulders are also breathable here. Think of pushing the wall away, drawing your hips back away from the wall. Feeling that inner left arch, seeing your right knee aligned over your right toes. One more breath. And then as you exhale, bend your knees, step your right foot back, find where your feet are parallel again, and once more you may have to play with the distance of your feet to the wall, that you can have your hands on the wall. And you can also have your feet underneath your hips. So we're doing wall dog here. Just like we do on the mat, you're going to modify this by bending the knees. As you bend your knees, look to see that you can see your big toes inside your kneecaps and that your feet are parallel to each other underneath your front hips. As you keep your knees bent, tilt your tailbone up. Think of your sits bones like eyes, the eyes of your butt cheeks, and they're looking into the middle of the room instead of down at the ground. So find that tilt of your pelvis with your knees bent, And then, if you want to take it deeper, start to press your heels into the ground to lengthen your legs. And notice right away how your low back wants to round, just like in the floor version of down dog. Keeping your tail tilted up, your low back in its lordosis. And again, your upper body can be higher, or you can have your hands and your shoulders level with your hips. See what's going to work for your shoulders. Notice as you breathe into this, how much tension, just like in floor down dog, wants to creep into the neck and shoulders. Think of being a turtle, of taking the top of your head towards the wall between your hands. So you feel your shoulder blades reconnect to your back, and you feel the space around your neck. This next exhale, round your back and roll into wall plank. So as you emerge upright, you'll need to bring your hands up higher and take a little stretch through your fingers before you replant your palms. Your feet should be okay where they are, but feel free to adjust if you need to. And then move from that right angle you had in wall dog to the long line that you had earlier in wall plank. So draw your low belly in and up and aim your tailbone towards your heels. Notice your inner arches. Inner ankles, have they dropped down? Press the outer edges of your feet down. Shoulder blades on your back. You're making a long line from head to heels. Next exhale, we're going to do that same series on the other side, on the left side. So step your left foot towards the wall and find your distance. You might start first just with a deeper stretch in your right calf. Keeping your right foot where it is, bend your left knee, open it a little bit to the left so you can see your big toe inside your kneecap and feel that inner arch lift. And feel that you can square your hips towards the wall. So you're bringing your right hip forward. Breathe into that right calf. It should feel a little more intense than when you're in plank. Then as you exhale, step your right foot farther back so that we can take a deeper stance in this wall warrior. Keeping your feet hip width apart so that you have good balance. And then once more, find where you can square your hips and you can create space in your low back. So you're not folding your front hips into your left thigh. So that might mean you have a little bend in your right knee or less of a bend in your left knee. When you take that wider stance front to back with your feet, you may be on your fingertips. Feel free to keep your fingertips on the wall. If you want to go into the fuller version, take your arms up overhead. Notice when you do that and you move into any tightness that you might have in your shoulders, how the low ribs want to stick out and you end up breaking through the low back. So keep core muscles strong. And as you take your arms up, slide your shoulders down. See if you can imagine breathing from your feet all the way up your body into your fingertips. Next time you exhale, bring your fingertips back to the wall. Swoop your left leg up and back, bringing your weight into your right foot. And if you're too far from the wall, change the stance so that you can anchor into your right heel. Coming into our wall version of Warrior 3. Keep your left front hip squared towards the floor, so your little toe is looking at the floor. Lengthen back through that left leg, energize through the ball of your foot, and see how much it works for your shoulders to open down towards the ground, keeping your spacious neck, shoulders on your back. And playing with how much weight do you have in your hands. Can you balance a little bit more into the lift and strength of the right leg and rely less on the wall? Next exhale, bring your left foot forward again, and we're moving into this wall version of Parsvottanasana, intense side stretch, where you have your feet lined up on an imaginary line. So left foot parallel to the side edges of the mat, and the right foot at a slight angle with your heel in line with your left foot. And then within this tighter stance, start to square your hips, right hip forward, drawing your left hip back, but also your left thigh muscle up and back. So not locking either knee. Be really mindful of your knees here. And then seeing when you have your legs and the breath supporting the stretches in the legs, whether or not you want to start bringing your torso lower, or if you need to be higher with your hands, shoulders on your back. If this is your first time with these practices, take your time to find out where your feet need to be. What's your distance from the wall that works for you? Next, exhale. Transition back into wall dog. So step your left foot back, find your distance from the wall, feet parallel to each other. Bend your knees, modify your wall dog, tilt your tail up, those eyes of your sits bones tilting up towards the sky. And then see if you can keep that and edge a little bit more length into your legs. Don't go straight into long legs. And if you're more flexible, be really mindful again of not locking your knees. So you may even have to keep them slightly soft. If you can, in this version, try taking your hands up higher and sinking down through your underarms to open your shoulders. But if you have any shoulder issues, be mindful of how they feel and whether or not you can breathe into them. So feel for how much length you can take in your legs, how much stretch you can take in your shoulders, and give that one more big conscious breath. Use your next inhale to uncurl into wall plank one last time, seeing how it feels. Maybe a little bit more familiar here with keeping inner arches lifted, with lengthening low back. And with your next exhale, step towards the wall. Turn yourself to face outwards and bring your back against the wall and your feet away from the wall. We're going to do wall sits. So with this, find where your feet are wider than your hip width, so closer to the edges of the mat. And play with how far they need to be from the wall that you can begin to feel your thighs. Be mindful, especially of your knees here, so that your knees are over your ankles, and open your knees out over your toes so you see your big toes inside your thighs. And then find where your back is broad against the wall. So tuck your tailbone down and allow your low back to tuck into the wall. So use your core strength to do that. And then bring your shoulder blades against the wall and the back of your head against the wall. And take a breath or so into your back and feel if there's any difference left to right in how you connect to the wall. You can let your hands rest on your thighs or drop down towards the ground. We're doing 3 of these, so you might want to start out with the first one somewhat conservatively, but don't be too conservative. The idea here is to wake up and strengthen your quadriceps, your thighs. If you have any issues with your knees, lift your toes and press the floor away with the balls of your feet so that you're not sinking into your knee joints. Give yourself another couple of breaths. We're spending a minute in each one of these. Breathe deeply into your thighs. And then use your next inhale and your hands against the wall to push the wall away and come up to standing on your feet. If possible, keep your feet where they are so you don't have to fluff about. And yet bend your knees a little bit. Notice the energy, the heat or sensation in your thighs. If your breath got quicker, slow it down. And take in what you've just done. Integrate that. And practice standing tall. Even though your feet are probably a little wider than they would normally be for standing tall, see if you can get a sense of lifting up through the back of your skull and reaching down through your heels, like you're pushing the ground away. Notice where your weight is on your feet. Even though you might be reaching through your heels, feel the spread of your toes, the even balance across the balls of your feet. So if you tend to collapse through your arches, favor the outer edge of your foot, the little toe ball of your foot, to find that lift. By the end of this balancing minute of integrating the intensity of the wall sit, you're probably ready to do something again. So as you come into your second wall sit, as you bring your back against the wall again, see if you can take your feet a little bit farther out, if you can go deeper. You can ultimately work with your thighs parallel to the floor. You want to find where you can breathe and where you can do 3 of them. As you find where your feet are, double check your toes line up. Your heels are behind the middle of your toes. And as you bend your knees are out over your toes. So you can see your big toe inside your kneecap. If you have any issues with your knees, lift your toes, push the floor away with the ball of your foot, and feel how that not only helps support your knee joints, it also helps plant your low back into the wall a little bit more. And then breathe into your thighs. Take tension, any tension that creeps into your jaw and neck, take that out. And as you release, focus the energy into your thighs. Your breath might become a little more audible, but see if you can keep it long and deep. Nearly there. To come out of this without having to change your feet, if possible, push the wall away with your hands, come up onto your feet right where they are, and stand tall. If you need to soften your knees a little bit, feel free, especially if you tend to get lightheaded, keep your knees a little bit softer. Find that balance between grounding down through the soles of your feet and lifting up through the back of your skull. See if it's possible to lengthen your breathing as you integrate that intensity. It may be helpful to visualize breathing from your feet all the way up your legs, like you're suctioning the breath out of the ground, letting it fill your belly and your ribs and your chest, and exhaling and lifting up through the back of your skull, starting to feel a little bit more length along your spine. And watching the sensation, notice how what was possibly really intense a moment ago starts to ease out after just a few breaths. Knowing that, trusting that, use your next exhale to come into your third, final wall sit. So if you can, start to come more parallel to the floor with your thighs. Find the distance that your feet need to be so that you can bring your thighs a little closer to the ground. Energize your feet so that you safeguard your knees and you help find more broadness in your low back. Let your shoulders rest, your head rest on the wall. Feel free to close your eyes if you feel balanced. Identify that sensation. Where is it exactly? What color would you put on it if you could? What temperature? Get to know it and stay with it by breathing slowly and steadily. Last couple of seconds. You can do it. Next inhale, push the wall away, come up onto your feet. And for this last integration, standing tall, bring your feet underneath your front hips so they're about a fist width apart. Find whatever length in your legs doesn't lock your knees. What I like to play with here in this simple standing exercise is this idea of coming down to earth from above, as though I'm having to reach down through my heels to even touch the ground. See if that gives you any more space along the vertebrae of your spine. Any more sense of lightness and lift through your whole body. I'm going to transition here from standing to bringing your left side towards the wall and finding when you reset your feet in that mountain stance parallel underneath you and you start to bring your weight onto your left foot, that your left hand touches the wall and touches it lightly for balance. So you're not leaning into the wall, you're not leaning into your left hip. And once you do, hold on to your right foot with your right hand. Having engaged the quadriceps, we're now going to release them, stretch them a little bit. Just use your left hand on the wall for balance to help you feel how you can lift more out of your left foot. So we're using the wall to isolate and become more precise in our engagement, not to sink in to it. Feel your inner left arch, the front of your right thigh, the lift of your low belly, particularly with stretching the quadricep muscle, the right thigh. Think of aiming your tailbone down towards the ground, keeping your core strong. Otherwise, if you change the angle of your pelvis, you'll lose that opportunity to stretch the right thigh more thoroughly. This next exhale, release your right foot down, reset your mountain stance, your parallel feet underneath you, and you may need to bring your feet closer to the wall as you bring your left forearm to the wall. So you're bringing your forearm all the way to your elbow to the wall and a little bit behind you. If you have issues with your shoulders, be mindful and slow with how you set your arm here. Once you find where your left forearm is against the wall, your feet are parallel, your hips are squared right out over your toes, then start to bring your left rib cage, your left upper chest forward until you feel the stretch in your upper left chest and shoulder, and it's breathable. Once you get a sense of that, of where you need to be, where your shoulder is down on your back and yet you're feeling a stretch in it, then release your right ear towards your right shoulder, and that's going to amplify everything even more. So check that you can breathe, you can keep your jaw and your tongue relaxed. Think of breathing from the ground all the way up your legs, your spine, into that opening on the left side. Next time you exhale, turn your nose or your forehead towards your shoulder. Find a slightly different stretch, more in the back of the left side of your neck. Give that one more breath, one more inhale into your neck, and then as you exhale, release your head down and turn to face the other way. So if you turn towards the wall, release your left arm, and we're working with that same shoulder stretch, but on the right side. So about the same distance from the wall, but check it. Check what's going on in this right shoulder. Bring your feet parallel to each other. Once you have your right forearm against the wall, your right elbow a little lower than your right shoulder. Otherwise, that shoulder will creep up. Finding the length in your legs that doesn't lock your knees, the length in your low back, so you have a good foundation underneath the focus in this right shoulder. And then let your head release, your left ear release towards your left shoulder. And check that you can breathe into what you're feeling in your right shoulder. So adjust the angle of your head as you need to be able to inhabit the stretch on the right side of your neck. With your next exhale, change the angle so that your nose, your chin drops towards your left shoulder. You're more in the back of that right side of your neck. keeping space in your face. Think of breathing from your feet all the way up your body. So even though you're focused on your neck, you haven't forgotten your foundations. Next time you exhale, let your right hand slide down, your head release to center, and then bring your right hand forward a little bit, ahead of you slightly, and you may need to adjust where your right foot is. If you feel too hemmed in by the wall, step out slightly so that we can stretch the left thigh, left quadricep here. So you're balancing on your right foot. Double check as you've made this shift into your right foot that your toes are still pointing straight ahead of your heel and in line with your knee and front hip. And then as you hold on to your left foot and you draw it up towards your left butt cheek, aim your tailbone down. Don't let your front hips sink forward. Draw your low belly in and up. We're going to make a transition here from just stretching the quadricep muscle into a fuller posture called Trikhanasana, or dancer pose. We're going to change the hold on the foot. Instead of holding your left foot from the outside, turn your palm to your inner arch. You'll know you're in the right place with this hold because your shoulder will be open. It won't be rounded forward. It'll be open back. Once you have the hold on your foot, energize your foot. So you're curling your toes over your fingers and pressing through the ball of the foot to safeguard the knee. As we move into this, as you start to fold forward slightly by pressing through your back foot and letting that left quadricep open even more, you may find that the right knee wants to lock. Powerfully lift your kneecap, your quadricep muscle up, and only go to the extent that you can feel that left front hip is facing the floor still. So you're not opening out into the room with your left hip. Let your right hand come down the wall as much as you need to help you feel balanced and supported by the wall. And then you can play with taking your hand away from the wall. If you do that, you may want to turn your palm up, or feel free to hover your right fingertips near the wall so you know you have the balance and support you need. One more big breath into this dancing, balancing pose, and then use your next exhale to release your left foot down. Take your time to turn the other way. So we'll start first with coming back into that quadricep stretch in the right thigh, finding your balance in your left foot, and your left hand is slightly forward. Then start to change where your right hand is. So instead of being on the outside of your right foot, you're turning your right palm to the inside of your arch. So your thumb is in line with your big toe. And you'll feel that right shoulder open. Before you start pressing out into the more expressive version of this posture, square your front hips forward, draw your low belly in and up, and then move into it by pressing your right foot into your right hand, letting your left hand come forward along the wall. As you start to fold forward, check you're not locking your left knee. Lift up through your left thigh. And that you're also not opening your right hip out into the room. It's facing more towards the floor. If you like, play in the last breath or so with balancing, with taking your left fingertips away from the wall. Focusing your eyes on a point will help your balance. Breathing will also help you stay present and not create tension in the dance, the dancer pose. This next time that you exhale, release, and come back to standing tall. Find that mountain stance. Notice how you feel, what's going on in your legs. So from that place of being grounded in your feet underneath your front hips, interlace your fingers and take your arms up overhead. If it works for your wrists and shoulders, keep your fingers interlaced and turn your hands inside out so you feel a stretch through the underside of your wrists. And reach up. You can, for a breath, let your shoulders shrug up, but then slide them down, clear the space around your neck. And as you exhale next, curve over to the wall. So the heel of your left hand touches the wall. We're moving into the half moon posture, but using the wall to find more length and space along the spine. Now, if this doesn't work for your wrist, you can unlace your fingers and bring your left palm flat to the wall and just rest your right hand on your left arm or hold on to your left wrist. And then let your head rest on your left arm. If you're not sure where your hips and shoulders are, you may have to look down before you let your head rest. Find where your front hips are squared off the long edge of the mat, and so are your shoulders. As you push the wall away with your left hand, ease out into having more weight in the outer edge of your right foot. From your feet, lift up through your legs and arch out through the right side of your waist. Find a stretch along your right waist and ribs, and focus your breath in between your right ribs. And this next time that you inhale, push the wall away, lift your right arm up, and turn towards the wall and come to face the other side so you have your right side near to the wall. Double check your feet. And then interlace your fingers. And this time as you interlace your fingers, change the lacing of your fingers so your other thumb is on top. As you lift your arms up overhead, if it works for your wrists and shoulders, turn your hands inside out. And then slide your shoulders down onto your back, finding space around your neck. And with your next exhale, ease over to the wall. And if it works to keep your hands interlaced, rest the heel of your right hand against the wall. If not, unlace your fingers and rest your whole right palm against the wall. And before you rest your head on your right arm, look down and see that your underarms are facing evenly off the long edge of the mat, and so are your front hips. Give yourself the right amount of room from the wall with your feet so that you can open out into the left side. So if you feel like you're crowded, shift out. If you're feeling precarious, shift in. And once you're stable and aligned, then press with your right hand so that you arch out into your left side and focus your breath between your left ribs. Start to feel a little more weight into the outer edge of your left foot. One more breath into that whole left side. And then with your next inhale, push the wall away, lift your arms up, come back up to standing. Gather up your block. You're going to keep the right side facing the wall and step the feet wider. So if you only have one mat, then turn your mat so that the long edge is against the wall. Check where your legs are going to be, where your feet are going to be. So you're taking a wider stance, bringing your left heel behind you, the inner edge of your left heel, towards the wall, and yet having your right foot a little bit of a distance from the wall so that your right foot aligns with your left arch, just like when you would do triangle pose away from the wall. You can always adjust the distance between your feet. Find what will work for you to start with. Take the outer edge of your left foot, your back foot, either parallel to the back edge of the mat or at a slight angle so your heel is slightly behind your toes. See what works better for your knee joint. The block is going to be in front of your right foot, your right toes, about a block's length from your toes. Once you're all set up in your foundation, press the floor away with the outer edge of your left foot. And if you have any issues in your knees, lift your toes in both feet. Be mindful of not locking your right knee. And as you lengthen up through both legs, as much as works for your knee joints, lift up through your belly. Lift your arms up parallel to the ground. And notice what touches the wall. You should feel your left heel, inner heel touching the wall, your right butt cheek, and possibly both shoulders, maybe your little fingers. Next time that you inhale, think of breathing from your feet up through your legs, up the length of your torso, and out through your arms as you exhale. Reach out over your right leg, come parallel to the floor like you're reaching out over a countertop. Pause there for a breath and find your length from your back foot. Press the outer edge of your left foot into the ground, push the ground away, lengthen up through both legs and through both waists. And as you exhale, see if there's any more reach through your right fingers coming out parallel. That doesn't overstretch your inner right thigh. Next time that you exhale, keep everything that you have and just change your arms. Let your right hand come down inside your right leg. And as you do that, look to see that your right knee is opening more towards the wall than towards your hand. Lengthen up from your left foot through your left waist and see if there's any more opening up through that left arm that doesn't bring your shoulder up around your neck. Use the wall for balance and to help you refine what's happening in your legs and in your waist and also in your pelvis. See if you can aim your tailbone towards your left heel. Feeling the opening of your left knee over your left toes and your left hip starting to open, so you might find a little bit more of that left butt cheek coming towards the wall. And then last breath or so, see if you can get a sense of the very top of your head stretching away from your left foot. This next time that you exhale, bend your right knee and bring your right palm to the top of the block. If you find as you transition here that your right foot feels too close to the wall, shift it out a little bit. And if you find that your left foot feels too far to transition your weight onto your right foot, then step it a little bit closer. As you push off with your left foot and take it up into the air, be conservative with how high you take it. Push the ground away with your right heel and lengthen up through your right leg. Find where your right knee doesn't lock, so you might need a little bend in it. It's very easy in this transition to drop your weight into your right hand, into the block, but see if you can push the ground away a little bit with your right hand instead of sinking into it. You may want to start with your left hand on your left hip so that you can feel the opening of that left hip, just like you had in Trikhanasana as you move into Ardha Chandrasana, half moon with the wall. Feel that that left hip is opening, but just to the extent that it doesn't pull the right knee out of line with the standing foot, with the right foot on the ground. Once you find where the foundation is in your right foot and knee, how much opening you can create in your left hip without pulling the right knee out. If you want, you can take your left arm up into the air. Use that left hand, if it's up in the air, to reach up, to lift weight out of your right hand. See if you can start to open your left ribs and your left shoulder towards the wall a little bit more. Feel a long line between the two hands and also between your left toes and the top of your head. So notice if you've crowded your neck, clear that space. Feel one more inhale to lift and open. You have the wall there for support, so use that. And then as you exhale, grab a hold of the block and bring it up with you as you bend your right knee and push the ground away and come up to standing. With your feet wide, shift the block to the left hand, setting it about a block's length ahead of your left toes. We're going to set up on this side for Trikhanasana, triangle pose. So taking the distance between your feet that you know will work for you. You can always reset it as you need. Turn your left toes to face off the short end of the mat so the midline of your foot is parallel to the wall. And bring your right heel next to the wall or a little distance from the wall, and if possible, behind your toes. Otherwise, your foot is parallel to the short end of the mat. Press into the outer edge of your right foot and find where your inner arch lifts. Your right knee starts to align over your toes. Check that your left knee is opening towards the wall so that your inner left arch is lifted, and you can see your big toe inside your kneecap on that left foot. Press the floor away with both feet. Feel free to lift your toes if that gives you more stability in your knees, more connection to the ground. Lengthen up through your legs, up through your waists, and lift your arms up parallel to the floor. Let your shoulders stay broad. This next time that you exhale, lengthen out over your left leg, coming parallel to the floor like you're reaching out over a countertop. Feel how that stretches your inner left thigh. Pause here. Push the ground away with the ball of your left foot. Draw up through your left thigh muscle, your quadricep muscle, so your knee doesn't lock. Draw up through your waists. And see if there's any more you can edge out through your arms. This next time that you exhale, just change your arms. Release your left hand down inside your left thigh. Lengthen your right hand up towards the sky and feel the connection all along that right side. Press the outer edge of your right foot down. Let your knee open out over your right foot. Your right waist and ribs lengthen, and yet keep your right shoulder up on your back. Notice what connects to the wall. Use your core strength. Imagine radiating out from your core, through your legs, up through your spine, out through your arms, and right out through the top of your head. So draw your low belly in and up. Aim your tailbone towards your right heel. The next time that you exhale, bend your left knee. Bring your left hand forward to the block. Find the height of the block that will work for you. Push off with your right foot. You might need to step it closer first so that you can feel your weight coming into your left foot without sinking into your left hand. As you start to lift your right leg up into the air, energize through that right foot. Press through the ball of the foot. Use the leg muscles to hold the leg up instead of relying fully on the wall or the left leg to hold the right leg up. You can keep your right hand on your right hip as long as you need to feel what's happening in that right hip as you start to open the right butt cheek towards the wall. Notice how that action tends to pull your left knee away from the wall. So really strong left thigh muscle to lift the kneecap up. It's also really easy here to sink into your left foot, your left knee, your left hip, and into your left hand. So use the ground and the wall to push away from them, to lift up out of them. If you do take your right hand up, lift your right fingers away from your left fingers. Start to open your right ribs and shoulder towards the wall. Stretch the top of your head away from your left foot. Give that one more breath. And then use your next exhale to release by bending your left knee and bringing your right foot back down to the ground. Bring your feet closer together so they're underneath your front hips. We're going to do what's called wall doll, ragdoll with the wall. You want to find first where your feet need to be, the distance they need to be from the wall, so that when you release forward and all you have against the wall is your butt, that you're not going to do a forward roll into the room. So find where that is. How far do your feet need to be from the wall? And then bring yourself back up. Double check that your feet are parallel to each other. They might need to be a little wider if that feels better. Find where your low back is long, so bend your knees a little bit, tuck your tail down, use your core strength to pull your belly into your low back and get some release in your low back through that action. See if you can feel both sides of your spine in your low back are pressed into the wall. And then feel that your shoulder blades are also against the wall. So you may have to actively roll your shoulders back. It may feel a little awkward initially. And see if you can feel any difference here with how your shoulder blades, your upper back, connect to the wall on either side of your spine. And then bring the back of your head against the wall. If you tend to forget about your feet or you have issues in your knees, lift your toes and think of pushing the ground away with the balls of your feet. That should also help create a little bit more connection of your low back to the wall. So keeping everything that you have, arms relaxed by your sides, the next time that you exhale, let just your head release forward so your chin drops down towards your chest. Notice when you keep your upper back against the wall and yet let the weight of your head go, what you feel in the back of your neck. And think of lifting your breath all the way up into the back of your neck. And this next time that you exhale, let the 1 or 2 vertebrae just below what you're feeling stretching in the back of your neck peel away from the wall. So it's as though the weight of your head is going to peel your spine away from the wall, keeping everything underneath connected to the wall so that you can articulate and focus the stretch in the upper back. Take as long as you need to feel that stretch and be sure that you can breathe into it, letting your arms continue to hang heavy. Very slowly peeling your spine away from the wall. So you'll need a little bit of foot energy, a little bit of core energy to keep your low back connected to the wall until you get to it. Think of curling your upper body over your lower body, letting the pull of gravity draw your upper body closer to the ground. Notice where you feel points of intensity. Feel free to give those areas an extra breath or so. Eventually, you'll get to the point where all that's next to the wall is your sacrum, and when you release forward, the underside of your butt. So to find a fuller release, change the angle of your pelvis so that you tilt your sits bones up and plant them against the wall. Keep your knees bent, so this is more about your spine and the inversion for your spine than it is about stretching your legs. And you can either let your arms hang, or if you rather, you can hold opposite elbows and let your weight release over fully. Check that you're not holding your head, so you may need to nod or shake your head to release, to feel the weight of it dropping down. If any of this doesn't work for you to be upside down, you can have your arms on your thighs or come out of it. Be mindful of what works best for you. Give this one more breath here. And then release your hands to the ground if you're holding opposite elbows, and bring your hips down behind your heels. If that's too tight a space to come down into this very narrow squat, then you might need to walk your feet farther forward. This is a good preparation for high crow. So it's a much narrower squat than what we're used to doing with the feet towards the edges of the mat, wider or as wide as the hips, and angled outwards. With this, you're working with your feet parallel to each other and using your hands on the outer edges of your knees to help bring your knees in line with your feet. And see if you can play for a breath or so here to find that alignment of your knees over your feet and yet to press the outer edges of your feet down so you keep your inner arches lifted. This might, again, be quite intense and a little bit too much for your body, so if you need to, take your feet farther out or work with a wider squat. Once you have your back against the wall, you have some sense of stability, bring your upper arms onto the top of your knees and press through the heels of your hands as you draw your fingers back. And notice how that action tends to lock your elbows. So instead of your elbows rolling down towards the floor, towards your thighs, roll them out towards the side edges of the mat. And then use your arms, the backs of your arms on your knees, to draw your rib cage up, to traction yourself up out of the ground, and to slide your shoulder blades back onto your back. one more breath in here. And then use your exhale to bring your legs out in front, and we'll stretch them out. This is the simple sitting posture of Dandasana, staff pose. We're using the wall here for feedback. What we're prioritizing is the back more than the legs, just like when we do this on the mat without the wall. So find however much bend in your knees you need to have so that you feel your low back is not rounded into the wall. You can slide your fingers in between your sacrum, your low back, and the wall. And then even if you have your knees bent, and don't worry about how much you have your knees bent, start with where you are. So even if they're bent, draw your toes back and look to see that your big toes and your little toes are squared with one another and they're above your heels. And then you can play with starting to stretch your legs out, with pressing through the soles of your feet to feel where's the length of your legs that doesn't round your low back into the wall. When you get to wherever that edge is, meaning you can breathe into it, then if you want to, you can take your arms up overhead, or you can keep them down by your sides and push the ground away. If you take your arms overhead, be sure that your shoulders stay broad on your back. And notice how your low ribs want to tuck out. So use the wall again for feedback to tuck your low ribs in towards your back, in towards the wall, so that the opening of your arms is coming from your shoulder joints more than from your mid-spine. See if you can feel, as you stay here for a breath or so in Dandasana, either arms by your sides or overhead, that you're pressing down through your sits bones, through the backs of your legs, and out through the soles of your feet to leverage your spine up out of the ground. Notice how you connect to the wall behind you and feel that it's even left to right. Give that one more breath in, and as you exhale, if your arms are overhead, release them down. Soften your legs. Turn your side body towards the wall. Doesn't matter which side, but if you want to follow me, turn your right side towards the wall and snuggle right up next to the wall. Have your block within reach and ready for you. And then once you're right up next to the wall, bring your right hand behind you, or whatever arm is closest to the wall, bring it behind you, and use the other hand to push the floor away and to swing your legs up the wall. By coming up this way, you should be able to come down onto your back with your legs up the wall and have your butt right next to the wall. But you may need to use your arm strength or wiggle your way in towards the wall so that you can feel your butt cheeks against the wall. We're going to do a similar kind of awareness, similar posture to what you just did, but a different relationship to the wall and the floor. So you have your legs against the wall and your back against the floor. And if you can, finagle the block up so that it's on the soles of your feet. And using the block to give some feedback to your feet so that you can feel that they're evenly stretched into the block. Similar idea as when you're on the ground, you may need to bend your knees a little bit. Once you've found where your sits bones are against the wall, the backs of your legs are against the wall, the block is up on your feet, which may take a bit of time to find, and your feet are engaged evenly into the block. Then see if you can find a little bit more of your tailbone tilting towards the floor so that you find that slight curve of your low back away from the floor. Don't overdo it so that you strain your low back, but see if you can feel where that's a comfortable curve in your low back. And then if it works for your shoulders, take your arms up overhead. Notice how your low ribs want to lift away from the ground. See if you can use your abdominal strength to tuck your low ribs down a little bit. Notice what you feel in your shoulders. And reach long through your elbows and through your fingers without crowding your neck. And try turning your palms to face each other so you have your thumbs and first fingers on the ground more than the backs of your hands. And then use the feedback system of the wall and the floor to feel for evenness left to right in your body, through your legs, along your spine, and into your shoulders and arms. If it doesn't work for your shoulders to have your arms overhead, have them out to the sides or by your sides. Give that one more breath. Use your exhale to bend your knees. And as you bend your knees, bring the soles of your feet to the wall. Check that they line up evenly. And put the block off to the side. And bring your arms down by your sides. Going to do a similar movement that we've done in preparing for bridge in the autumn season. Use the wall as you inhale, push the wall away, and let that energy in your feet pressing the wall away lift your butt up away from the ground. See if you can articulate the vertebrae of your spine up. So think of curling your tailbone up so that you can feel each vertebra lift away from the ground. As you do this, lift your arms up and just take your arms as far overhead as works for your shoulders. As you exhale, bring your spine back down. And if you lifted your arms back down. So you're inhaling, pushing the wall away with your feet to lift your spine up, maybe your arms up, and exhaling and bringing your spine back down, your arms back down. Take your time to find this so that you can feel a level of resisting coming down. So again, you're articulating the vertebrae of the spine, both away from the ground and back onto the ground. Instead of flumping down, control the movement. So use the strength in your legs to help you find that. This next time that you come back down, going to keep the arms down by the sides, bring your feet away from the wall, and push the floor away with your hands, and see if you can lift your butt and maybe part of your spine up by lifting your legs up. Don't strain if this doesn't happen. If it works for you to do this, do it a few times. Even if it feels like you're not going anywhere, continue to try engaging your butt up off the ground by lengthening and strengthening your legs and pushing the ground away with your hands, with your arms, keeping your shoulders broad so that you don't press the vertebrae of your neck into the floor. After a few of these, we're going to bend the elbows and tuck them right in next to the ribs. Energize your hands as they come to face each other across your torso. And then press your outer shoulders and elbows into the ground to further feel you create a channel or a tunnel for your neck bones. So instead of having your neck on the ground, you have your shoulders on the ground. And as you press down into your shoulders and your elbows, inhale into your chest, feel your sternum rise. And as you exhale, curl your tailbone up and push the wall away with your feet and find that same articulation of your spine up off the ground. So you're moving into a version of bridge pose with the wall, feeling how much easier this is with the wall than on the floor. And just come up as far as you feel safe, particularly if you have any issues in your neck. This may not work for you at all. So be conscious and be sure that you're breathing. Keep the pressure out of your neck and pressing down through your shoulders instead. If you lift up high enough that you'd like to bring your hands down and interlace your fingers behind your back, then roll your shoulders towards each other. Press your outer shoulders down. If you're feeling your neck is overstretched, lift your chin a little bit. Continue to use your feet against the wall, pushing the wall away to lift up out of the ground. So you have shoulders pressing down and feet pressing down to give you a little bit more lift, less pressure. If you need to, you can walk your feet up higher. That may be enough. Working with bridge against the wall. If you feel you're ready to take it into the next level and want to work with half shoulder stand, Then ease your butt into your hands as you bend your elbows and bring your hands to your sacrum. Continue to press down through your shoulders, through the outer shoulders and elbows, and feel a tilt in your low back. So you're tilting your tailbone towards the floor as opposed to rounding your low back towards the floor. This may be enough here, simply playing with finding the shoulders, the spine, and the pelvis, and keeping your feet on the wall. If you want to take it to the next step, you can play with taking one or both feet away from the wall. The trick with half shoulder stand is finding only the length in your legs that doesn't compromise the curve in your low back. And with finding that curve in your low back when you're upside down. So again, feel that you're tilting your tail, your sacrum, into your hands. If that's too much pressure on your wrists, emphasize pressing your shoulders down. And then only finding the length in your legs that works for you without changing your low back. Stay here as long as it feels comfortable for you. Continue to breathe. Finding the angle of your legs in space that minimizes that pressure in your wrists. So you may need to take your feet closer to your head or bend your knees a little bit. If you are still in half shoulder stand, you haven't come out of bridge, bring your fingertips back to the floor, your feet back to the wall, and use the pressure in both your hands and your feet to roll your spine back down. It may be that you can go directly into this inverted leg posture where you're resting your sacrum on the block or on a blanket, which would be a little bit more comfortable. You may even want to put a blanket on top of the block. Or it may be that you need to roll off, get your block, and come back. You're bringing your sacrum to rest a little bit higher up on the lowest level of the block and maybe also a blanket, and your legs to rest against the wall. Your arms can be by your sides, out from your shoulders, or overhead. Find where it feels comfortable. This posture in itself can be a great practice. You don't necessarily need to have the block, but it helps to release the blood flow through the pelvis and back up to the heart to have that slight elevation. And this is a resting pose, so let your breath settle out so it softens. You may need to play a little bit with how close or far you are from the wall, that the backs of your knees feel good, you feel stable, and you can let go. To ease your way out of this, if your arms are overhead, bring them down. Gather up the block and put it off to the side. And as you settle your sacrum and low back onto the ground, bend your knees and take them out to the sides as you bring the soles of your feet together. So we're doing bound angle with the wall. And just like all of the wall postures, using the wall for feedback. So if you've edged away from the wall, scoot yourself back towards the wall so that you feel both sits bones, both butt cheeks, firmly and evenly on the wall. And then check that your feet are even, that your toes line up, your heels line up. And bring your hands to your inner knees or thighs and press your knees or thighs towards the wall just to the point where you can breathe into that inner thigh stretch. Notice when you start to deepen into that inner thigh stretch, if anything changes in your sits bones. See if you can feel that your sits bones remain even on the wall and your waists are even. Give that another breath. And then if you can reach your feet, feel free to take a hold of your feet and start to open your big toes away from one another. And notice how that change in the angle of the feet affects your knees and your hips. Once you've found where your feet and your knees and your hips are relatively comfortable and supported, then take your arms out shoulder level and let this be another resting pose. Feeling how you're supported by the wall and by the floor. So notice how that feels to be contained. Noticing any area where you're active and holding up or holding on. And experimenting with letting go into this container. To transition out of this posture, use your hands to gather your knees up, bring them together, and you may want to pause in tuck pose for a breath or so and take your breath into your belly, into your thighs. When you feel ready to transition back onto your feet and into your day, take your arms out to the sides and roll your legs over to one side. And then over to the other side. So you're creating a little bit of a twist. You can use your hands to keep you from going too far. Finding where that feels good in your back. Just taking a few rolls side to side to reawaken your spine. And then when you're ready to come up fully, let your legs come to the ground off to the side and push the ground away to come up. Find where you can sit comfortably tall. To conclude your practice, lift your arms up overhead. As you exhale, draw down along your midline. Acknowledge yourself and anyone else you're practicing with. Namaste.